Thank you, Stephen. You are so sweet. Thank you for such all those kind words. Hi, everybody. My name's Polly Pistol, and I'm an alcoholic. By God's grace, in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had a drink since April the 11th of 1977, and for that, I am eternally grateful. I have a home group, and that's the West Connect group in Jacksonville, Florida. And if you're ever in Jacksonville, I invite you to our group. We meet on Monday night at 7 o'clock. I have a sponsor, the amazing Rena Kay, and she has a sponsor. I sponsor, and the women I sponsor, and so on. I'd like to tell you I am an active member in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was active during the pandemic. I couldn't go out, but I Zoomed like a nut. There was Zooms all the time, and I stayed in touch with the women I sponsor. So I am an active member in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to tell you that a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous come from tragic backgrounds as children, but that's not my story. I am an only child of parents who loved me to pieces. So I had to erase that reason for being an alcoholic because I can't, that's not it. Goodness, I want to have a little frog in my throat. At any rate, like I said, I am the only child of non-alcoholic parents. I had a very good bringing up. I was raised Southern Baptist, so I was raised as a Christian, so I knew about God long before I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I married at the age of 18, and I married a man who would go into the Air Force, and I loved that lifestyle. I absolutely loved being an Air Force officer's wife. He was a B-52 pilot. We had an amazing marriage. We had 2 sons, and we didn't get to travel the world. He got to travel the world, but I didn't get to travel the world. We were stationed in places like Loring Air Force Base, Maine, which is the tippy top of Maine. And then we ended up in a place called Plattsburgh, New York, which was a little warmer, not much, but a little warmer than it was at Loring Air Force Base. But our military career, being with him in the military was wonderful. I feel like our sons were exposed to so many things that maybe a lot of children would not be exposed to. So that part of our life was really good. But what happened is that he ended up going to Vietnam at the end of the war. And what they did is they sent advisors into Vietnam to help them so that they could turn the country over to the Vietnamese. And what happened while he was there, he was at Da Nang, and while he was there, he got exposed to Agent Orange. And when he came back to the States, we were not, excuse me, we were not back very long before he fell ill. And he ended up in the hospital for a year, and then he was medically discharged, 100% medically discharged. Now, and all of this that happened to me, I'm going to tell you about my first drink of alcohol. My first drink of alcohol, we haven't been married very long, and I get an invitation from the base commander's wife, and it says that I am to attend a coffee. And it's got a big red mandatory stamped on the envelope. And I know that I can't remember if I started. Hang on, I can't remember. I didn't start my clock. a big red mandatory stamped on the envelope. And what happened is I opened the envelope and I am invited to a tea given by the base commander's wife. And my husband says, it's a morning thing. And my husband says, you have to attend. It's mandatory. Well, 18 years old, didn't know what was going on. And this was just like overwhelming to me. But at any rate, I went to this coffee, and the space commander's wife stood up at a podium and told all of us little second lieutenant's wives what our responsibility was as an Air Force officer's wife, that we would, attend all functions, we would be dressed properly, and so on and so forth. And not long after that, there was a luncheon. And I went to this luncheon. Now, I am raised Southern Baptist, and I don't know, but I'm sure most of you on this Zoom know Baptists don't drink. Now, that's probably a big joke, but that they're not supposed to be drinking. And at any rate, I went to this luncheon, and they had all these little tables set up for us to sit down and have lunch. And then along the side of the wall was a long table, and it had a fountain and little glasses. And I saw these women picking up the glasses and putting it under that fountain. And I put my glass under that fountain. And I don't know about you, but I can remember my first drink as if it were yesterday or today, because I took that, it was sherry, a really wussy drink. I took that drink and I drank it, and it was so warm going down, and I just felt it warm up my chest. It was fabulous. And I put my glass up under that fountain again. Now, I did not get drunk that day. I did not get disorderly. I didn't do anything out of line. What happened to me that day that I didn't realize is whatever that is inside of me that makes me an alcoholic, I had just lit the flame without knowing it. And what happened is I did not become a daily drinker right away. I mean, I still was drinking only when we went out and just not drinking that much at all. My alcoholism was a fairly gradual thing. It just seemed like the longer I was alive, the more I drank. And it just got to a point that I was a falling down drunk, where my husband had even gotten embarrassed with me at a couple of parties, telling me, you drink too much. You can't drink like that. And you do things and say things. And it just seemed like that my alcoholism progressed. At any rate, shortly thereafter, we'd been in the military, not 20 years, maybe like 14 years. And my husband got sick. And he had come back from Vietnam, and he was getting ready to go into a job at the National Security Agency. And what happened is he fell ill. And he ended up in the hospital at Andrews Air Force Base for a year. And then they retired him. And he was a victim of Agent Orange. And he had gone and been on the ground for a little while in Da Nang and was exposed to Agent Orange. And that ended his military career. And what we did is we went back to Texas and retired. And we were there for a while. And my drinking just continued to get worse and worse. And my children were at that time a freshman and a junior in high school. And my drinking was very, very, at that point, I was trying to hide it. I was a realtor, and I often remember these things. And a lot of times, if you're a realtor, you have new houses that you have listed. I listed a couple of new houses, and I hid alcohol in those houses and went and drank there so that my husband wouldn't know that I was drinking, as if by the time I got home, he wouldn't know that. But at any rate, he came to me and he said, Polly, there's a treatment center and it's not far from our house and I want you to go. And he took me to this. It wasn't a treatment center. It was a detox center. And I entered this detox center, and I personally did not even know another alcoholic. I hadn't ran into anybody that I knew that drank like me. That's why all my drinking was so hidden. I just didn't know anybody who drank like I did. And I didn't really have any friends that I didn't even know what an alcoholic really was. I had seen Days of Wine and Roses and I'll Cry Tomorrow, but I certainly didn't think that was me. But I had seen those movies. And I went into this detox center, and they gave me some amazing medicine, and I passed out for about a day and a half. And then they got me off and said for me to go into the day room with the rest of the patients. And I went into the day room and I looked around. And I thought, oh my God, I am not like these people. I mean, the arrogance that I had, that I am not like these people. And I sat there for about 3 days in this detox center. And the more detoxed I got, the more my libido became alive. I was 36 years old. And I looked around that detox, and those men were really looking good to me. And what I ended up doing is running off with one of the men in detox, and ended up being 12-stepped out of a motel in Euless, Texas, and brought back into that detox. And what I tried to be was just, a stellar student of alcoholism. I was just going to, be the best patient they ever had in that detox center. I just tried to pay attention. I just tried not to draw any attention to me. I just wanted to be discharged from the place. And when I was discharged, I got in my car and I got a bottle of scotch and I checked into a motel. And what happened was I had a friend, and that friend said that something came over her. I just look at my life and I see God shot after God shot after God shot. And she said something came over her, and she decided to go try to find me. And she drove around until she found my car parked outside this motel. And I hadn't shut the door all the way. It was kind of on a half latch. And she pushed it open, and she found me laying there, and she called 911. And I was pronounced dead on arrival when I arrived at the hospital. Needless to say, I was resuscitated because I'm here today. However, what happens is when you try to commit suicide, you get the attention of the authorities. And I got the attention of the authorities, but most of all, I got the attention of my husband. And what happened is my husband obtained a court order from a Fort Worth judge that I was a detriment to myself and others, and I was court committed to treatment. And I entered a treatment center on April the 11th of 1977 in Dallas, Texas. And by God's grace, I was in that treatment center. And I found sobriety in that treatment center. And what happened is I just became so in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. I just became passionate about AA in this treatment center. People would come in from the outside and they would, read the book to us and tell us our stories. They would take us to meetings outside. We'd either get on a little bus and they'd take us to meetings, or people would come in and they would take us to meetings. And I just fell further and further in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want you to know But I sit here today, 46 years sober, and I still have that passion for Alcoholics Anonymous. I love this program with all my heart and soul. This program has given me a life beyond my greatest expectation. I have been given so much. I wish that I have always been a poster child for AA, but I haven't. I didn't start off being a poster child for AA because my husband was sick. That was my excuse. And it gave me a wandering eye in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wondered at a lot of different men in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I had this friend, Dave Pistol, and he and I never had an affair. I wasn't, I didn't have an affair with him like I did the other men in AA. And Dave came up to me one day and he said, Polly, I'm in love with you, but I don't want to have an affair with you. I want to marry you. And I want you to know that I had the time of my life with Dave Pistol. Dave and I ended up moving to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we started our AA life there. We kind of ran away from Texas. In fact, we got married in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We ran away from Texas, and we ended up. Dave was working in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we started our AA there. And then he came home one day and he said, there's a job that I'm going to apply for in Southern California. And he had lived in Southern California before and he really loved it. And of course, I was up for adventure. It sounded good to me. And what happened is he took that job in Southern California in 1981, we moved to Southern California. And a life in Alcoholics Anonymous began. And everything we did revolved about Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I was 3 years sober, I had heard this woman speak in Dallas and Austin, Texas, and her name was Dottie Harris. And I said, if I'm ever anywhere where this woman is, I'm going to ask her to sponsor me because she touched my heart so much when she spoke. And when I got there, I went to the intergroup office in Santa Monica, and I said, do you know a woman by the name of Dottie Harris? And they did. And they gave me her phone number. And I called her, and she said, you meet me Monday night at the Bellflower Big Book in Bellflower, California. And that's what I did. I met her at the Bellflower Big Book. And I asked her if she would sponsor me. And Dottie was my sponsor for 33 years until the day she died. And I was absolutely so blown away with her. I have had 3 sponsors in Alcoholics Anonymous. My first sponsor was the man who ran that detox center in Texas. And he ended up being my sponsor. And he's the one that told me to be at his house when I got out of treatment. And he's the one who took me through the steps the first time. And what he told me, and I can always remember because I'm kind of backtracking a little bit with this, what he told me is, Polly, you have a car and you can take the women from detox to meetings. So what happened was I started sponsoring immediately, almost with very little sobriety, because I was taking these women to detox. And that's what happened. And that kind of service started when I was brand new, right out of treatment. And that's the way I do it. Just go help somebody. That's the only thing. Frank would always say, there was another beautiful man I got to meet in Southern California, and his name was Frank Honeycutt. And he used to say, if you came in feeling bad or whatever was going on, he'd look at you and he'd say, chicken, you'll feel a lot better if you'll just go help someone. And that's what began that me helping someone and sponsoring people in Alcoholics Anonymous and staying busy in this program, busy doing the things that we do. Dave and I we're so blessed. We were so blessed. We ended up being able to travel the world and be able to talk about Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the things that happened is that I am Dave's fourth wife. And Dave we ended up meeting up with this couple, Dick and Peggy Martin, and we ended up meeting up with them, and they took us through their traditions and relationships. And Dave was always saying, I want to stay married. I want to be the best husband I can be. And what happened is he began to write out this traditions and relationships. And Dave and I got to take that around the world and tell people how we experienced and how we stayed married and what we did for each other and how we learned. I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous to have respect for my husband, and he learned how to have respect for me. I'm his fourth wife. I'm saying that again. I mean, so Dave wasn't doing well in the marriage area. So we ended up being married for 42 years and being able to travel the world and do things that, most people never get to do. I am so grateful for the life we have that we got to have together. My two sons, I have two sons, and it was very obvious that my youngest son was doing a lot of alcohol and a lot of drugs. And I just, I worried about him. I did all the wrong things with my kids. I mean, today I know better. I would tell them about their about his alcoholism. You're an alcoholic, James. You use drugs every day. You're an alcoholic. I mean, I did everything wrong. And what happened is that Dave and I ended up, like I say, moving to Southern California, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to my son, is to me to get out of Dodge, trying to run their lives, trying to get my youngest son in AA, doing all this thing, everything wrong, just because I loved him and I did everything wrong. And what happened is when I was 6.5 years sober, my youngest son called me on the phone and he said, Mom, I want what you have. And I said, sweetheart, if you want what I have, you're going to have to go to AA. And he said, I don't want it that bad, and hung up on me. But what happened is he ended up going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And like he said, he was on the fringes of Alcoholics Anonymous. But what happened is he began to get more and more involved with young people and became more and more knowing. He and a friend of his that lives here in Jacksonville now, the two of them were together in Texas, and they were doing a lot of service. And he got where he loved Alcoholics Anonymous. And today that son is 38 years sober. So what I've done is I've been able to walk this walk with my youngest son and be able to be with him as he has, and be able to stay sober alongside of him, which has been an absolute amazing miracle. And Dave and I we have been able to work with people in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the things that I take a lot of, I loved being married, and I didn't do marriage very well. Here I had been a military wife, and I didn't do a very good job of that. And certainly after my husband got sick, and especially in early sobriety, I was not a faithful wife. But what I wanted to do is we both wanted to work with other people because we wanted to stay married. and we wanted to be married in Alcoholics Anonymous. So what happened is one of the most amazing things that Dave and I got to do is that we got to work with other couples in Alcoholics Anonymous, which has been an amazing gift that we have been given in AA. Dave and I ended up leaving Southern California and moving to Birch Bay, Washington. And we went there. Dave's a big outdoors guy, and he wanted to be in the outdoors and do stuff. But Dave ended up having open heart surgery. And from there, his health just started to decline. And it started to decline more and more. And we moved from there to Jacksonville, Florida. And by the time we got to Jacksonville, Dave's health was failing very much. So Dave was very ill for about 7 years. And 5 of those years, he was very sick. And one of the things that I want to talk about is I believe that God loves us so much, and that the thing that I had felt so guilty about and the worst, not only what I had done as a mother, because I was not a good mother. I was a drunk mother who was passed out. My kids took care of themselves. Those are the things that I did. I was incapable of taking care of my sons because of my drinking. And most of the time, I was passed out. My youngest son, who tells his story in AA, talks about stepping over me in the kitchen just to get a bowl and his cereal and milk, and then stepping back over me and sitting down and eating. That was just a normal scene for him. I was incapable of taking care of my sons. And then I go, when I get sober, and I run off with Dave. And even though that turned out to be a really good marriage and a really good thing, that act was not good. And so I had a lot of bad feelings about that I had done that I had done that with my kids. And so what happened is that my son is starting to want to get sober. And I want to do everything I can to help him get sober. And I made a lot of mistakes there. I mean, I just didn't let other people help him. I wanted to help him. So along the way, we make mistakes. And as you make mistakes, you try to do the best you can to clean those mistakes up. So that's what, I've tried to do today, is to clean my mistakes up. My oldest son, I did not know that he was drinking as much as he was drinking. And what happened was I would come see him in California, and maybe he would go to dinner with me or what have you, but he wouldn't spend very much time with me. So I didn't see a lot going on with his drinking. And 5 years ago, he called me up and he said, "Mom, I'm going to rehab." I just held the phone and I went, "Rehab?" I mean, I was so out of touch because he had not allowed me to get very close to him. And I just assumed it was because he was so angry at me and all the things that had happened during my alcoholism. What I found out was he might have still been angry with me, but what it was his own alcoholism. And that was the problem. And he was getting sober himself. And he went to treatment. And it's been the most amazing adventure with my 2 sons, because I have one son that got sober when he was 21 years old. And I get another son sober when he's 59 years old. But you know what? This has just been nothing but joy. It's just been pure joy. And I was talking about that Dave kind of kept getting ill. And what happened was is I'm gonna get through this part of my story, okay? That I want to let you know that Dave and I got to be married for 38 years. And on March 20th, Dave died. And it was, it was like part of my body went with him because we had done stuff together. We had been together. But what I'm so grateful for is I'm so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. And Dave and I got to have the marriage we got to have. We got to have the recovery we got to have. And my first husband was ill. And I was selfish and self-centered and a very, very sick alcoholic. Now today, I'm still very much an alcoholic. I feel like that I've had so much grace bestowed upon me because of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. Because when my husband got sick, and when he got really sick, I was able to be there for him 24/7. I was able to take care of him. I was able to be the wife I always wanted to be and show up, be able to be dependable and be able to show up and be there for him. I'm so, so grateful for all of that. And that's what I learned here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned how to be able to be there for my husband, be there for my children. And I'm telling you, what happened was it was absolutely a love fest when Dave passed. People came, Hillary's on this Zoom, and I just, she was there, and she was there just holding, me up and being there for everybody else that was there. I mean, it was just absolutely what we do in AA. It's just that we show up and we're there for the people that we love. And I have been so blessed that I have been able, that I couldn't walk through this the first time, but God let me finish this. I got to finish this. I got to be there when Dave took his last breath. I got to be there. And I am so grateful for the gifts that I have been able to have. Now, I have a new adjustment because I was married for 42 years. In fact, I've been married all my life. I have never been single since I was 18 years old when I married the first time. I had never been single till now. I don't know how to be single. I'm like, this is crazy. I don't really know what to do. I got to find out how to act and what, I don't know how to act. I've had this identification for all these years. So I get to have a new start, being I hate the term, but I'm in the widows club now, and I get to learn how to do things by myself because I've always been a partner. And so, Alcoholics Anonymous is going to teach me how to do all these things. And I have all these amazing friends around me, and I have all these amazing women that I get to have in my life. And I get to be called sponsor. And that's the thing I love most, is just working with another alcoholic woman. I love that with all my heart. And I didn't get to do that as much as I wanted to because Dave was so ill and it took so much of my time. But I have just been very blessed, and I'm gonna I'm going to I am embarking upon a new adventure and doing things differently, learning how to be single and learning how to be the woman I am today. And I just want you to know that I am so grateful that I got to have 42 years with the man of my dreams and to be able to have a marriage and be two alcoholics hooked up together. And we wrote, we did all the things to have a good marriage, traditions in relationships. We kept that close to us because we just wanted to have a good relationship. And by God's grace in this program, Dave and I got to be married for 42 years and have a beautiful life. And I'm still sober. And of all the things and all the pain that was there, not once did I think of a drink. Not once did that enter my mind. And I'm so grateful to be able to share with you tonight. And thank you so much.